Welcome back, everyone. So I have Jill McPherson with me once again, and we're going to wrap up this conversation in part 3 today about the topic of truth, why we find it difficult to tell the truth. And again, just to clarify, truth meaning those times where we'd like to say something different than what we did say because we didn't want to hurt someone's feelings or be mean, as opposed to those outright malicious lies that most of us probably don't come across too often. So why it's difficult to tell the truth, we covered that in part 1. In part 2, we talked about then how do you tell the truth in a way that is respectful and in a way that someone can hopefully hear it. And then we got into, so then what if you're on the receiving end of that truth? And how do we receive it in a way that works for us, that we can take something away from that? And we also were talking about how this is a lifelong thing. It's something we learn as kids, to not be mean, to not hurt people's feelings, and we take that into our adult relationships. So Jill, I'd love to hear from you. If you can talk to us then about receiving that information and maybe some examples over the lifespan of where this might crop up and how you might be able to handle it differently than we've done in the past.
Right. Okay, great. Great summary. So now we're, imagining we're the receiver of somebody's truth, and how can we not sort of fall down into this sadness or depression over somebody not being in alignment with what we wanted. I just want to now go back again to the whole, kindergarten sort of scenario of how we need to start making sure that we can allow children to practice receiving somebody else's no, or somebody else's, some sort of disappointment. So for example, when I'm teaching young children, so I also teach music from kindergarten to grade 3, and we start off with a hello song, and the song changes, but what we do within the context of the song doesn't. And that is, it's like a meet and greet where they need to make eye contact and they need to offer their classmates either a handshake, a high five, namaste, or ask for a hug. And we practice hearing no with hugs. So, again, it's amazing how hard it is for them. They've already, in kindergarten, grade 1, 2 and 3, have already learned that they have to hug everybody.
Right.
It's because they got to be nice. They can't be mean. And particularly for young girls, I want to teach them that it's okay to say no to a hug. Right? Mm-hmm. And particularly for boys, I really want to teach them to hear nonverbal communication as well. When somebody's trying to let go, or when there's appear not to be interested. Mm-hmm. So what happens is when somebody says no, I teach them that the response to no is thank you. Thank you for letting me know, or thank you for sharing your truth with me. Mm-hmm. And so that they're practicing receiving, not taking it personally. Maybe this person's having a bad day. Maybe they just don't want to be touched right now. Maybe later, there's lots of things, but let's not get into assuming that it's because they hate you. Let's just, oh, they liked me enough to tell me their truth.
Yeah.
That's building a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's reframing the whole situation. And so we practice that. And even recently I had an interesting experience where I do something called the Song of the Month. And one of my students said, after we were, doing it again, she said, I don't really like this song. And another adult in the room heard that and said, sort of reprimanded her of like, that wasn't very nice. And so I took the opportunity to say, actually, I really appreciated you telling me your truth. I understand this song just doesn't really work for you. And I can appreciate that some of the songs I bring, even though I like them, that doesn't mean everyone else is going to like them. So, so I just suggested on how she could say it in maybe a more gentle way. But otherwise, I still thanked her for telling me her truth.
Yeah.
Right. And giving me that feedback. Mm-hmm. So I also need to really make sure I'm role modeling that I can receive somebody else's truth, right? Like I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And that's what this is really all about, is learning to receive someone's truth without taking it personally. And instead seeing it as a compliment, as, like, oh, isn't this nice that they value my friendship enough that they're willing to tell me their truth, that they want
My
to.
dog's visiting.
Yeah. Yeah, the dog's allowed to learn about truth too.
Yes. I'm not sure how well she'll receive it.
Yeah. The good news is dogs always tell the truth, right?
Yes, they do, don't they?
So being open to receiving that. So for instance, you know, when we fast forward to the teen years, you know, my daughter had given an example of, you know, she had told, you know, a young teen boy who was like interested in, you know, he expressed his interest in her. Mm-hmm. And when she wasn't really reciprocating, he in turn interpreted as mean. But then the vicious cycle could have continued if she took the way he responded to her personally, right? So he was telling his truth in the sense of he was very upset and disappointed with her decision or her opinion. And I said to her, you know, he's allowed to be angry. He's allowed to be disappointed. He's allowed to be upset. Mm-hmm. Let him sit with it. Let him, you know, let him experience it. And he, you know, you can't take it. You're not responsible for his feelings. You can't take this personally. You told you his truth. And I said, what he doesn't realize is that if you pursued a relationship in an inauthentic way, that you would actually be disservicing both of you. And that you've actually, it's been in actually both of your best interests that you've told your truth. Because now he's not wasting his time with someone who's really not interested. He's now open to pursuing somebody else or being with somebody else, and vice versa. Now she's open to somebody who she's more really in alignment with. Yeah. Right. And so, and then again, it comes back to, like, you know, I think of your friend who had asked you into this, you know, marketing business. And if she heard you say, like, thank you, and I know that, you know, you'll do great with this, and this is in line with me right now, and I really appreciate you asking. You know, I envision it being in her shoes, particularly when we get back to thinking about, like, if she was upset, just realizing that, like, she's allowed to be upset and she's allowed to be disappointed, and let her just sit with that. And you can empathize. This is coming at, as you said earlier, from a place of empathy and compassion, and empathize with where she's at, and then allow the time to, allow some time for her to kind of sit with that, and then realize again, and then if she's in the receiving, that she might need time to sit with it, right? Mm-hmm. and not take it personally, and hopefully she would be able to start developing those skills of as being the receiver of it, of mm-hmm. okay, this isn't about me, this is about a friend who told me her truth, who I am grateful for now, because if she had come in with me inauthentically, there would have been resentment build up. It probably wouldn't have gone well. There would have been some financial struggle, and just seeing, okay, so I know this is end up being best for all. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It really gives you information on then where to focus your energy, right? Because like you said, in that particular instance, I did end up, I went to the presentation, I signed up, I bought some product and stuff, but I hadn't really wanted to. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up dropping out of it. Right. So for her, if I had been truthful at the beginning, she wouldn't have wasted the time and effort of getting me involved and have a false hope that I might stay in and contribute to her team and so on. She would have been able to avoid all of that. But unfortunately, I didn't tell the truth in that particular circumstance. And so I left feeling resentful and feeling upset with myself that I'd let myself get into a situation I didn't want to be in. But then she also was starting at square one with, well, now I've had a person drop out and I need to replace them with someone else, find someone else who's interested. Whereas we could have avoided all of that if I had just said from the outset, without that worry of sounding unsupportive, that this just was not for me. Mm-hmm. So when we really start to think about all of those kinds of conversations again, bringing them back even to those more personal relationships that we have. So with partners or our children, thinking about the times where we have not said what we really wanted to say and what was the fallout from that. And so thinking about if we had said it differently, if we had said what we really wanted to say, what the opportunity could have been there for us. Yeah, to trust that person, to love them enough to be honest with them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And using even a line like what comes up for me is Brene Brown's line of the story I'm telling myself right now. So really owning like the truth within your, like, so that they know that this isn't right for me, but that doesn't mean it's not right for anybody else. I'm telling my truth, but it's not a truth I'm expecting everybody else to join me on.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's what I think when we take things personally. So for instance, if I ask you to join with me in this business venture and you say no, then I also am assuming that, or often people are assuming that you don't think it's good, or you don't like it, or you don't understand why I enjoy it, but it's not in alignment with you. And yet it still can be something very beneficial for me. Yeah. And so I always say, when we tell each other the truth, and when we can hear it, when we can say it, when we can hear it, it's always what's best for all. You know, because back to your friend, you know, when you tell your truth, then she's now open to being ready to receive somebody who is in alignment with the product, with the business, with the way of making money, that community, whatever, the features that she loves about it. Yeah.
So I think one of the big takeaways here is if we can start being this way with our children, and so that this is a way that they learn to communicate. But also the other takeaway I think is that it's never too late to start adjusting the way that you do things, right? And so thinking back about some examples in your own life potentially where what could have gone differently if I had said that more honestly, and using those past examples to motivate you to try it in the future. And I think sometimes there's even an opportunity to go back to, conversations and say, when we talked about this last time, I know I said that, but here's what I really like to say about it. And I think there's a way, if it feels like it's worth the investment for you, to revisit things that maybe are hanging over you or that you're carrying around with you. I think there's still always that opportunity to have better communication with important people in your life.
Sure, for sure, yeah. Using these skills, particularly over and over again with those people you really value, your relationships you really value, because on the other side of this is a deeper relationship, right? The more that you can tell each other and hear each other's truth, the more authentic everything about the relationship becomes.
Yeah.
And the trust that's built is huge.
Yeah.
So just practicing, just noticing, what's going on when you aren't able to tell the truth, what's blocking you. And it's usually some fear around something. And then recognizing it and going, okay, so how can I share my truth in a way that is gentle, loving, and respectful? And then how can I not take personally how that person receives my truth?
Yeah.
And just stand back and allow that person to receive it in the best way they can, and be patient and be kind with whatever stirs in them from your truth.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. That is all such very valuable information and very valuable strategies and tips that I think people can take away and start trying out. So like I said, there are 3 parts to this conversation. So if you're just coming in now and watching the third, go back, watch the first 2. This one will make more sense. I also really encourage everyone who's watching to go check out Jill's website, jillmcpherson.com. Jill is an excellent blogger. I've read many of her blogs and I learn something every time. They're always relevant to real life, I find. You give some really great real life examples that people can really relate to because they probably have are going through it or have gone through very similar things. So I really appreciate about about your writing, that it's really, people can really relate to it. It's really relatable. Yeah.
Well, that's great. And that being said, there will be a blog on this topic too. So check out my website for a written version of what we've been talking about. So
perfect.
Go back and have it in print. Sometimes people like to see visually
yeah.
what we've been talking about.
Yeah, they don't have to go back and try and find it again in the video. They could just go read it. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. I really appreciate it. And I have a feeling we might do this again in the future. So keep an eye out for future videos.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, Jill.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.